Welcome to my channel, where we bring you more true creepy Appalachian mountain stories. Tonight, we'll journey into fog-laced hollows and haunted ridges. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment with where and when you're watching. Let's dive in. They said you could see the lantern flickering before you ever heard him. That's what old Micah Carter used to tell me when I was a kid, back when we lived in that splintered, leaning shack at the edge of Blackberry Hollow. He'd sit on the porch every evening, fingers yellowed from chewing Red Man tobacco, eyes narrowed toward the tree line like he was waiting for something that hadn't arrived yet, or maybe something he hoped never would. "They don't find your bones, boy," he said once, as the last orange threads of sunlight slipped behind the pines. "That's the thing. They don't find nothing. No teeth, no boots, no blood. Just a smear on the moss where the light was last seen." He spit into a rusted coffee can and gave a little nod, as if confirming some private horror with himself. At the time, I thought it was just another backwoods ghost tale. The Appalachians have hundreds, if not thousands. The people who live out here, scattered across gravel switchbacks and moonlit ridgelines, grow up steeped in death and stories. Some of us think that's just how you survive out here. Keep your fire lit, keep your doors bolted after dark, and never, ever follow the light. I didn't believe in the Lantern Man back then, but I do now. I first saw him on October 13th, 1998. I remember because it was the same night a copperhead slithered under our outhouse, and Micah had to shoot it with his old squirrel rifle. It was also the night Jonah Triggs disappeared. Jonah was 17, red-haired, full of fight and whiskey. He'd been out hunting raccoon with his dog Gus when the storm hit. Gus came back alone, foaming at the mouth and whimpering like he'd seen something that broke his canine brain. They found the dog on Micah's porch, soaked and shaking. But no sign of Jonah, just a flickering light deep in the woods, like someone carrying a lantern and walking slow, side to side, like they were pacing. The sheriff came, looked around, and scratched his head. "Ain't nothing out there," he told Micah, ignoring the cold sweat beating on his own neck. "Boy probably got drunk and wandered off." Micah just nodded. But later, when the law was gone, he looked at me with something in his eyes I didn't understand yet. Something cracked and heavy. "It started again," he muttered. Damn him. When I asked what he meant, he just stood up and walked into the house without a word. I was 15 that year. Not a boy, not a man. And not yet wise enough to know that when an old-timer like Micah stops talking about something, that's when you start listening. The next morning, I found Micah sitting at the kitchen table with his shotgun laid across his knees. He hadn't slept. The lantern over the stove gave off a soft glow, but it couldn't chase the shadow in his eyes. "Micah," I said, voice dry from sleep and fear, "what did you mean last night? Who started again?" He didn't answer right away, just chewed at his lip and stared out the window. Finally, he said, "There was a man once, name long forgotten, lived down in the deeper part of the hollow, where the trees don't move right and even birds won't nest. Folks say he made a pact, something old, something inhuman." "A pact?" I echoed, still unsure if he was telling truth or story. He looked at me then, eyes sharp like flint. "Boy, you think every holler ghost is just a tale to keep kids out of trouble? This thing ain't just a spirit. He was made into what he is. And when the lantern shows up, it means he's looking again. He only walks every 20 years. Needs a soul to burn. A trade." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to laugh it off, but the way his fingers trembled told me better. "You stay out of those woods, no matter what you hear," he said. "Especially if you see the light." But I did hear something. That night, long after Micah's snores filled the house, I woke to a sound I can only describe as singing. Soft, low, almost like a hymn. It drifted through the window like mist, curling into the room and chilling my bones. And underneath that voice, far in the distance, a flicker, a light. I sat up and moved to the window, heart pounding. Through the trees, deep near the creek bed. I saw it. A lantern swinging back and forth. A single point of firelight cutting through the black, unnatural stillness. It wasn't flickering like a flame. It was pulsing, hypnotic, calling. I don't remember walking outside. Just the cold moss under my bare feet and the sound of branches parting ahead, like the forest itself was making way. I should have known better, but I was 15 and stupid and full of my own imagined courage. The closer I got to the light, the quieter everything became. No crickets, no frogs, just my breath and that steady hum, like an old radio between stations. Then I saw him. He stood by the edge of the creek, wearing what looked like an old miner's coat, stained with soot and ash. His face was hidden under a wide-brimmed hat, and in his hand he held a lantern, glowing with an otherworldly pale blue fire. The lantern man. He didn't move, didn't speak, just raised the lantern a little higher. And that's when I heard Jonah. "Help me." His voice came from the dark behind the man. Broken, desperate, thin like smoke. I saw movement, just a glimpse, someone crawling, dragging themselves through the leaves. "Jonah," I whispered. The man took a step forward, and the light grew brighter. Suddenly a hand yanked me back. I stumbled, hit the ground hard, and looked up to see Micah, eyes wide and furious. "You damned fool!" he hissed, dragging me away. "He almost had you." I looked back once. The lantern man was gone, but where he'd stood, the ground smoked. The grass was blackened, burned, and in the center something shimmered, something small and silver. Jonah's belt buckle. Micah didn't speak to me the whole walk back. The only sound was the huff of our breath and the crunch of frost-stiff leaves beneath our boots. I'd never seen him like that before. Shaking, not with age, but with fury. And fear. Maybe mostly fear. When we got back to the house, he threw the deadbolt, yanked the curtains shut, and poured himself 3 fingers of something strong from the mason jar he kept under the sink. "You almost didn't come back," he muttered after a long silence. "You understand that, don't you?" I nodded, too ashamed to speak. "That's how he does it. Ain't claws and teeth, no. Just want, need, memory. Makes you think someone you love is out there. But they're not. They're gone." He pulled the silver belt buckle from his pocket, wiped soot from the surface with the edge of his shirt. The initials JT shimmered faintly in the lantern light. "Then what did I hear?" I asked, voice trembling. "Echo," Micah said flatly, "like a church bell long after it stops ringing. Just enough to make you believe." The next few days passed like ghosts. Nobody saw the lantern man again. Not yet, but whispers began to circle the hollow. Old Mrs. Dunley up the road claimed her youngest grandchild saw a pale man with fire eyes standing at the edge of their property one night. A hunter swore he followed what looked like a lost hiker for an hour before the man simply vanished mid-step. And then came the fire. It started behind the church, just a low, flickering glow at first. By the time anyone noticed, the whole woodshed was up in flames. The fire brigade made it just in time to keep it from spreading, but there was no clear cause. No lightning, no wind, just fire with no source. That's when Micah started talking about him again. "He's choosing," he said. "One soul ain't always enough. Sometimes it takes a few. And like fools we waited. We hoped it was over, until Cora Mays went missing. She was only 10. Sweet girl with a limp from a birth defect, but the sharpest mind in the whole county. She went out to gather wildflowers for her mama before supper. Never came back. They found her basket near the creek. And in the moss nearby, scorched earth. Again. Same smell of smoke. Same silence. And this time I saw the light again. That pulsing glow. Only now it wasn't alone. There were 2 lights side by side. The 2 lights floated through the trees like ghostly fireflies, swaying in perfect sync, their glow soft but steady, almost intentional. I watched from my bedroom window, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Micah was already awake. He stood by the wood stove, stuffing shells into his shotgun. His jaw was set tight, a muscle twitching in his cheek. "He's got her," he said without turning around. "And now he's leading us." "You're not thinking about going out there," I said. But the moment the words left my mouth, I knew he was. "I am. That's suicide." "No," Micah said, slipping his coat over his shoulders. "It's justice." He moved like a man who'd already made peace with death. I followed him anyway. I couldn't let him go alone, not after what we saw. Not after Cora. We walked deep into the trees, the twin lanterns always just ahead of us. They never sped up, never slowed down. Like they knew we were coming. The forest grew darker the deeper we went, though the moon was full and bright behind us. The usual sounds of the woods were gone again. No owls, no insects, no wind. Just our boots in the leaves and that damn humming again, growing louder with every step. And then the path ended. Not in a clearing, not by the creek, but at the mouth of a cave I'd never seen before. It wasn't on any of the maps. I'd hunted these woods since I was a child, and this hollow was new, freshly opened, like the earth itself had split just to show us something it was never meant to. The lights floated inside and stopped, hovering near the mouth like guardians of some ancient threshold. Micah stepped forward. "You don't have to come." "I know," I said, and followed him in. The air inside was thick, not just with dust or dampness, but with something wrong. Every breath felt like breathing in memory, regret. We passed old wooden beams, half-rotted, marked with mining symbols, relics from the 1800s, maybe earlier. And then we saw him. The lantern man stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by soot-blackened rock and scorched roots that hung from the ceiling like veins. His hat was gone, and now we could see his face, or what was left of it. His eyes glowed with that same cold fire. His skin was burned away in patches, revealing not bone but something older, something that shimmered faintly with heat, like coal that refused to die. He held 2 lanterns now, one in each hand. Inside the second one, barely visible through the smoky glass, was the outline of a child. Cora. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't crying. She was sleeping. Micah raised the shotgun. "Give her back." The lantern man tilted his head, curious. Then he smiled. It was the kind of smile you see on snakes before they strike. And then he spoke. "You have brought me 2. I will return one." The voice wasn't human. It wasn't even language, not really. It was feeling dread, sorrow, rage, spoken like syllables. Micah's arms trembled. "You can't take another," he said. "I do not take. I trade." Micah looked at me. "No," I said. "Hell no." But he was already moving. "I took her basket from her hands," he whispered. "Told her to hurry up. She wouldn't have gone out if it wasn't for me." Before I could stop him, he stepped forward and placed the shotgun on the ground. The lantern man opened one hand. The second lantern dimmed. Cora fell to the ground, coughing, gasping. Real. Alive. Micah turned back to me. "Take her home." I grabbed her hand. "No, Micah." But the light exploded, and the cave was filled with smoke and silence, and he was gone. Only one lantern remained. The cave fell quiet after that. Not just with sound, but with presence. Whatever energy had pulsed through the stone, whatever old, burning life had occupied that chamber, it faded. All that remained was smoke curling upward into cracks in the ceiling and the sound of Cora sobbing into my shirt. Micah was gone. The lantern man, gone too, vanished into smoke and ash, leaving behind only the single lantern still glowing faintly on the cave floor. I didn't want to touch it, but Cora, she couldn't stop looking at it. Her tiny fingers reached for the handle, and before I could stop her, she picked it up. "It's not hot," she whispered. I crouched next to her, staring into the light. There was something inside, something flickering deep in the flame, like a memory caught in amber. For just a moment I saw a face. Micah's face. Not screaming, not afraid. just watching. Then it was gone. We left the cave and never spoke of it again. Not to the sheriff, not to our neighbors, not even to each other. Cora grew up quiet after that. Never talked much. Never walked near the tree line. Me? I stayed. Took over Micah's house when I was old enough. Kept it in shape, kept the front porch clean, kept the old rifle loaded. Every 20 years I wait. And every now and then, on the darkest October nights, I see that light again. Just a flicker. Just a warning. The lantern man still walks these hills. But he ain't hunting anymore. He's waiting. Because trades don't end. They just pass down. And the next time he comes, I'll be ready. I've seen what's inside the light. And I know how he burns. They say there's a tree up near Devil's Elbow that moves when you ain't looking. Not the branches. Not the leaves. The trunk. The whole damn thing. Gnarled and black as pitch, with rope burns worn deep into its bark like old scars. Nobody remembers when the tree got there. It wasn't on the maps from the 1920s. But by 1941, it was already a legend. A lonely sentinel standing near a sharp switchback high up in the cliffs, where fog hangs heavy and the ground never dries. Folks used to call it the Widowmaker's Root. Now, they call it the Hanging Tree. The first time I saw the tree, I was 17, drunk, and trying to impress a girl named Loretta Jean. She'd grown up in the next holler over and had a laugh that could stir your bones in the best and worst ways. We'd driven Micah's old pickup up the mountain late one Saturday, wheels kicking gravel over the edge of the ridge. The moon was bone white and high, and the fog rolled across the road like slow river water. "Don't you chicken out now, Owen," Loretta said as she lit a cigarette with shaky fingers. "It's just a tree." We stopped at the turnout, where Devil's Elbow bent so sharp it felt like the world twisted back on itself. That's where the hanging tree stood, just off the road, roots clinging to the rocky slope like claws. I remember stepping out, crunching across the loose stones. The air smelled strange. Not rot, not ozone, something like wet rope and copper. Loretta stayed by the truck. I should have too. The tree was enormous, bigger than it looked from the road. Its bark was almost black, and no matter how much wind there was, its limbs didn't move. But the ground did, barely, like it breathed. And in its branches, rope, 7 ropes to be exact. Old, frayed, some still knotted at the ends. I stood there staring like a fool until Loretta screamed. I turned fast, but she wasn't looking at me. She was pointing at the tree. One of the ropes had started to swing, slowly, back and forth, with nothing in it. Then another, then another. 7 ropes, 7 swings, and then we heard it. A sound I'll never forget as long as I live. A snap, followed by the wet thud of something heavy hitting the dirt behind us. But when we turned, there was nothing there. No bodies, no footprints, just rope marks in the dirt. And the ropes were still swinging. We ran. Didn't stop till we hit the valley floor. Didn't talk about it for weeks. And even then, Loretta made me swear never to go back. I wish I had listened, because 2 weeks later, Loretta Jean was found at the base of that tree, neck broken, skin around her throat bruised like rope burns. But there was no rope on her. None in the tree, just her, crumpled like a puppet with the strings cut, and a smell in the air like rust and smoke. The coroner said it was an accident, said she slipped, maybe fell asleep behind the wheel and tumbled down the slope. But Loretta's car wasn't there. Her keys were in her pocket, and there was no sign of sliding, skidding, or climbing. Just her body, twisted at the base of the hanging tree, limbs bent like they'd been yanked by unseen hands. I didn't go to the funeral. Couldn't. Not because I didn't love her. I did more than I ever told her. But because I knew something no one else did. She never went back up that road. Not by herself. Not after what we saw. That tree had called her back. Dragged her there, maybe. Or worse. Promised her something. In the weeks after her death, I started hearing things. At first, it was just creaks in the floorboards. like someone pacing in the attic above my room. Then it was voices, whispers I couldn't quite make out. Always right behind me, always just out of reach. Then came the dreams. They were vivid, too vivid. I'd find myself standing on the cliffside again, looking at the tree, only now there were figures hanging from those ropes. Shadowy at first, featureless, swaying like meat in the wind. But over time, they sharpened. I saw Loretta first, her face pale, lips purple, neck cocked at an impossible angle. Then others I didn't know. Men, women, children. Some in old-timey clothes like Civil War ghosts. Some dressed like locals I'd seen at the gas station or in church. One night I saw myself, hanging there, eyes open, mouth agape, rope tight around my neck. I woke up gasping, clawing at my throat. That same night my dog Duke disappeared. Just gone from the front porch. No bark, no struggle, no blood. Just the scent of copper in the wind. I started looking into the tree's history, though folks didn't like to talk about it. Got dirty looks at the library, whispers behind my back at the diner. But I found one old file, yellowed, water-damaged, stuck behind a box of church pamphlets in the records room of the county courthouse. The file was marked, Devil's Elbow, 1912, 1914. Unauthorized lynchings. There were 7 names. 7 people taken from their homes, strung up on a tree at the cliff's edge. Accused of witchcraft, of theft, of consorting with dark things in the woods. No trials. Just rope and rock and vigilante justice. And here's the worst part. Each name had a death certificate. Each one dated October 31st. Different years, but always the same date. Always Halloween. I looked at the calendar. It was October 29th, and I could hear the creak of rope every time the wind blew. The next night, October 30th, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with every light on and my father's old revolver resting on the coffee table in front of me. I hadn't touched that thing in years. Never had a reason to, until the woods started whispering. Outside, the wind picked up. I swear I could hear the creak of wood and hemp in it, the kind of sound old gallows might make in the cold. Then the power cut out. No warning. No flicker. Just gone. Darkness swallowed the room so fast it felt like something alive had stepped into it. I grabbed the flashlight and clicked it on. That's when I heard the knock. Not on the door. On the window. Soft. Deliberate. 3 times. I turned, heart thudding, and raised the light. Nothing. Then came the second knock from the back window this time. Then the third, the one near the hallway. It was moving. Something was circling the house. I backed toward the hallway and nearly tripped over the damn flashlight when it rolled out of my hand. The beam spun across the floor, up the wall, and caught a glimpse of feet outside the window. Bare. Swinging. Not standing. Not walking. Hanging. I froze. My mind screamed to move, but my legs refused. Then the feet vanished. I turned and ran through the kitchen out the back door into the yard. The moon was high, and in that blue-tinted dark I saw them. 7 figures swaying in the trees around the house. None touching the ground. All turning slowly. And in the center of the yard, Loretta, standing, head tilted, eyes empty, lips moving but making no sound. Then suddenly, sound snapped back into the world like a switch being flipped. She screamed my name. The figures dropped, hit the ground all at once, and they started walking toward me. I bolted down the driveway barefoot, gravel biting into my soles, lungs on fire. Didn't stop until I reached the old ranger station at the base of Devil's Elbow. I pounded on the door like a madman. It opened, finally, and old Sheriff Dillard, long since retired, long since broken by what he wouldn't say, just stared at me with those hollow eyes of his. "You saw them," he whispered. Yes, I think they're—" "You've been chosen," he said. Then he pointed toward the ridge behind him, toward the hanging tree. "It happens every few decades. Trees gotta feed." My throat dried up. "What the hell is it?" He shrugged. shoulders sagging under some enormous weight. No one knows. Some say it's cursed ground. Some say it isn't a tree at all. That it only looks like one. That it grew from bones, not roots. Then he handed me something. A noose. Old. Frayed. Still damp. You've got till midnight tomorrow, he said. After that, it chooses for you. I didn't remember walking back home. One moment I was standing at the ranger station with that damn noose in my hand. The next I was in my kitchen, blood on my feet from the gravel, the rope coiled on the table like a sleeping snake. Midnight was 24 hours away. I spent the morning boarding up the windows. I salted the thresholds, hung crosses above every door. I found myself whispering prayers I didn't believe in to gods I didn't know. Anything to keep the images out of my head. But they came anyway. The dead. Swinging. Watching. By afternoon, I'd made up my mind. I was going to burn the tree. I packed the truck with gasoline cans, matches, a shovel, and the revolver. I didn't know if any of it would work. But I had to try. If it meant peace for Loretta. If it meant I could live. I'd give the hollow something else to whisper about. I reached Devil's Elbow just before sunset. Fog already creeping low and slow like it was stalking me. The tree stood waiting, tall, blackened, and ancient. The ropes were back. 7 of them, still swaying. The tree felt wrong up close. I don't just mean eerie, I mean wrong, like it didn't belong in this world, like it was faking being a tree. I poured the gasoline at the roots first, then up the bark as far as I could reach. My hands shook the whole time. The smell of it made my stomach churn. When I lit the match, it sputtered in the wind. But the second one caught. I tossed it at the base. The fire should have spread. Didn't. The flame hissed, sizzled, and then died. Swallowed. Like the tree drank it. That's when I heard the voice. Low. Deep. Like earth cracking under pressure. You cannot unroot what was sown in death. The ropes began to twitch. One rose. A noose shaped itself. It hovered, waiting. And then came the visions, not dreams, not memories, witness. I saw all 7 hangings, played out in awful detail. A mother accused of hexing a neighbor's cattle. A black preacher hanged for preaching in the wrong tongue. A child no older than 9, blamed for a mine collapse. 2 lovers, caught in a fevered kiss in a churchyard. A soldier who'd deserted the war and tried to come home. And Loretta, last, she chose to go. Or something made her choose. Each of them stood now around the base of the tree, flickering like old photographs, eyes black, skin gray. Then they all turned toward me. You must take a place, they whispered, or another will be taken. The noose hovered again. I backed away, but my legs locked, my breath caught, my voice stolen. The tree creaked, the rope dropped, right in front of me. Suddenly, a figure stepped between me and it. Solid, breathing, alive. Sheriff Dillard. He didn't look afraid, just tired. Go, he said. Someone's gotta end it. And he slipped the rope over his own neck. Before I could scream, before I could reach him, the tree absorbed him, like mist into bark. He was gone. The other ghosts faded. The noose turned to ash. And the tree stopped swaying. For the first time in decades, I stood alone at the base of the hanging tree, the wind still at last. No creak of ropes. No whisper in the leaves. Just silence. Deep and unsettling, like the mountain itself was holding its breath. Sheriff Dillard was gone. No trace of him. No boot prints. No dropped hat. Just ash where the noose had hung, slowly drifting into the fog like dust from a burned-out fire. I stumbled back to my truck in a daze. My hands trembled the whole drive down the mountain. Every branch that scraped the windshield made me flinch. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, expecting to see those 7 figures following me, their feet never touching the ground. But nothing came. Not that night. Not the one after. For a while, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe the hanging tree had claimed its final soul. Dillard's sacrifice, whatever pact he fulfilled, had quieted it. I stopped dreaming of Loretta. The whispering in the walls stopped. I even opened the windows again. People stopped disappearing around Devil's Elbow. The road reopened. Hunters returned to the trails. I went months without even thinking about that tree. But I should have known better. Things like that don't die. They wait. A year later to the day, Halloween night, I was driving home from the diner when I saw a new roadside memorial at the bend near the tree. Flowers, candles, a teddy bear soaked in rain. I stopped. The name on the cross? Carla Dillard, the sheriff's daughter, 17 years old, neck broken in a fall. No signs of a crash, no tire marks, just there, at the tree. And just above her name, someone had carved into the wood, "It only sleeps. The root must feed." I don't go near Devil's Elbow anymore. I sold the house and moved 2 counties over. But sometimes, I dream of ropes again. Of cold wind and swinging bodies and a voice like coal cracking in the fire. And I know, deep down, it's only a matter of time before the tree calls someone else. Because there were 7 nooses, and only 8 have hung. That means the hanging tree is short one more. And it remembers me. Splitjaw Mine was closed in 1903 after the collapse. That's the official story anyway. Truth is, folks were already gone long before the cave-in. Miners refused to go past Shaft 3. Not because of gas or unstable beams, though that was the excuse on paper, but because of what they heard down there. Screams, whispers, scratching, and once, in August of 1902, something that laughed like a man. But deeper. Better. Something that didn't stop when the shift was over. My great-uncle Hollis worked the mine in its final years. He never talked much about those days. Not until the drink loosened his tongue. And even then, his stories came out in gasps and half-thoughts. Like he was afraid the mine itself might hear him from wherever it still squatted under the earth. "They brought something up," he'd say, staring into the fire like he could still see it. "Didn't mean to. Wasn't gold or silver. Weren't even coal. Just empty. Blacker than black. And when it came out, it didn't come alone. As a kid, I thought he was just trying to scare me. Now, I'm not so sure. I went to Splitjaw last summer. I didn't mean to. Wasn't planning to go near that place. But my friend Caleb? He's into weird history. Ghost towns, old mines, tunnels carved into the bones of the mountains. He read about Splitjaw on some message board and decided we had to go. "It's barely on the map," he said. "It's like the town got scrubbed. No post office. No photos. Just a few graves and a mine entrance that nobody's touched in over 100 years. So, of course, we packed our gear and drove out into the heart of nowhere. The first sign that we'd gone too far came when the GPS blinked out halfway through the valley road. Second sign? The forest stopped making sound. You ever been in the woods when the birds go quiet? It ain't right. The mine was still there, just like the forum said. A crumbling wooden arch. The word Splitjaw carved in rotted planks above the entrance. The whole thing leaned like it wanted to fall back into the hillside and be forgotten. There were warning signs nailed to nearby trees, rusted through, half-eaten by bark. One read, "Danger, shaft unstable, do not enter." Another simply said, "We left for a reason." Caleb laughed. I didn't. We went in anyway, flashlights in hand, breathing dust older than our grandfathers. The mine groaned around us with every step, like it was remembering how to hate. The first few tunnels were quiet. Then we reached Shaft 3. It started with the temperature drop. A wall of cold so sudden I could see my breath hang like smoke. Caleb shivered and said something about elevation, but I saw his knuckles go white on the flashlight. Then came the sound. Not loud, not sudden, just constant, like nails scratching the inside of your skull, like whispers you couldn't quite catch. Like breathing from behind a sealed door. Caleb moved toward the tunnel that veered left. That's when we saw it. A smear of black on the stone wall. Not paint. Not mold. Wriggling. Like it was alive. Caleb leaned in close, flashlight trembling. It's moving. Then it blinked. We ran. But the tunnel didn't end where it should have. We turned the way we came. Only it wasn't there. Just more tunnel. More darkness. And behind us, the shadow began to move. You never really know fear until you hear something following you in the dark. Not running, not stomping, just dragging. Like something long, boneless, and patient. We ran blind through the shafts, flashlights bouncing off twisted beams and rusted rail. The air got thicker the deeper we went, heavy like it had weight, like it had intent. And behind us, that sound. Scraping, sniffing, breathing in stutters. I shouted for Caleb. He didn't answer. Turned a corner, slipped on the gravel, smashed my shoulder into the stone. My flashlight spun away, its beam landing on the far wall. And what it showed still won't leave my dreams. It was a face, pressed into the rock like it had been swallowed by the wall. Its mouth wide open in a scream that had no end. Its eyes hollow. Skin not skin. Something stretched, melted, and above it, scrawled in what looked like blood, a single word, hunger. I crawled toward the light, toward my flashlight, toward anything, but that's when the tunnel breathed. Not metaphorically. The walls moved, in and out, like lungs, and from the center of the darkness behind me came a shape, blacker than shadow, tall as two men, but with too many arms and no face. Where its head should have been was a dripping slit of lightless red. It didn't walk. It slid, and I felt it touch my spine without ever laying a finger on me. Then a voice, right behind my ear, cold and wet. You brought light where there should be none. That's when I blacked out. I woke up alone, just inside the mine's entrance. It was daylight. My flashlight was next to me, dead. My watch, cracked. Phone, gone. No sign of Caleb. No sign of footprints. Just a smear of that same black substance across my shirt. I stumbled back to the truck. Somehow the road was there again. The GPS worked. Like the mountain had let me go on purpose. Like it wanted me to tell someone. I filed a missing person report for Caleb. No one found anything. They sent a team up the mountain, but the mine entrance was gone. Collapsed, they said. But I know better. Because sometimes when I sleep, I hear scratching in the walls. I hear Caleb whispering my name. And sometimes, I answer. I stopped talking about the mine after that first week. People looked at me like I was cracked. Like grief had eaten through my sense. And maybe it had. But I knew what I saw. What I heard. What I felt in those tunnels wasn't delusion. It was something old. Something aware. Still, I tried to move on. Took shifts at the mill. Kept my head down. Pretended that the scratching in the walls of my trailer was just the pipes settling. Then the dreams came back. Worse this time. More vivid. Always the same. Caleb standing in the tunnel. Skin stretched too tight. Eyes gone. Mouth wide open. Not screaming. Just waiting. And behind him, that shadow. Slithering. Smiling somehow without a face. And always whispering. One fed. More must follow. By November, I couldn't sleep more than an hour at a time. I boarded up my windows. I unplugged the TV after it started turning on by itself. Always to static, always at 3 a.m. sharp. I stopped dreaming eventually. That was worse. Because when the dreams stopped, the sounds started. Clicks in the hallway. Hissing in the vents. Then, one night, the door to my basement opened by itself. I live in a single wide. There is no basement. But the trapdoor was there anyway, in the middle of my kitchen floor, old wooden, damp, with a rusted iron ring where the handle should be. And beneath it, stairs. Stone. Worn smooth by time. Carved into the earth where no crawl space should exist. I stared at them for hours. Then I closed the lid, nailed it shut, and moved into my truck. A week later, I drove 4 hours to see Uncle Hollis. He was in a care home, long since lost in the fog of age, but I figured if anyone would know how to end this, it was him. I showed him a picture I'd drawn, the face I saw in the wall, the one screaming, Hollis stared at it a long time. Then he whispered something that made the hairs on my neck stand up. "You dug too deep." I asked him what he meant. "Split jaw don't end where the earth stops," he said. "It goes under, into a place no map shows. A place the old ones sealed up before we ever got here." I asked what was down there. He looked at me, really looked, for the first time since I walked in. And he said, "The thing that eats light." That was the last time I saw him. He died in his sleep that night. Heart stopped, face frozen in terror. Nurses said he'd been whispering the whole time, clutching a lump of coal in his fist like it was a crucifix. After Hollis died, I swore I wouldn't go back. I told myself I'd seen enough, heard enough, lost enough. But the thing about something ancient, something hungry, is it remembers, and it calls. One night, I woke to find the trapdoor in my trailer open again. Nailed boards torn out from the inside. The air that rose from the black beneath smelled like stone, wet and rotted, and something else. Charred bone. And then I heard Caleb. Faint, echoing up from below. "Owen." Just my name, over and over, like a prayer spoken backward. I don't remember deciding to go down. Just my foot hitting the first step. Then the next. Then the cold. It wasn't just a chill. It was ancient. The kind of cold that remembers when the sun was still young. The stone steps led downward far longer than they should have. Miles, maybe. Hours passed. My flashlight dimmed, then died. But I wasn't blind. Something down there glowed. Not brightly but dim like embers under skin. I reached a chamber, vast and hollowed out like the belly of a dying god. And in the center I saw it, the shadow. It didn't stand. It didn't slither. It hung, like a hole torn through the world, pulsing with something far worse than hunger. It watched me. I could feel it behind my eyes, thumbing through my memories like pages in a book. And behind it, faces, dozens, maybe hundreds, fused to the walls, staring, whispering. One of them was Caleb. His mouth moved, but no sound came. Another face, Uncle Hollis. Then me. But I was still standing. I screamed, backed away, and the thing moved. No sound, no impact, just presence. I ran, but the tunnel bent backward. Gravity shifted. Walls breathed. The floor opened, and I fell. I woke up in a clearing outside Split Jaw Mine. It was dawn.
No trapdoor. No stairwell.
Just a fresh scar in the grass where something had pushed up from underneath. In my pocket, I found a stone. Black, smooth, warm. I threw it. It bounced, then stopped midair, and melted into the soil. I haven't slept since. Because every night, I hear my voice now, calling someone else's name from below. And I know I didn't escape. I was sent back. Because the mine's shadow isn't a place. It's a mouth. And it's always hungry. The days since that night blur together. I don't know how long it's been. A week, maybe more. Time feels thin now, like I'm living behind glass, watching everything move around me in slow, jagged pieces. I see the shadow in reflections, not just mirrors, in windows, in puddles, even the TV when it's off. Sometimes it moves. Sometimes it's behind me. I tried to leave town, got in the truck, drove west until the radio fuzzed over and the sky turned gray. Then I woke up in my bed again. Same clothes, same mud on my boots, and dirt under my nails that wasn't mine. That's when I found the notebook, leather-bound, tucked under my mattress. No idea how it got there. Inside were dozens of pages filled in a script I don't recognize, curved, looping, ancient. But I understood it. Not because I'd read it before. Because the shadow had taught me. One phrase kept repeating, burned into the paper in red ink or dried blood. I can't tell anymore. One feeds. One remembers. One returns. And then, beneath it, a name.
Mine.
They say trauma has a way of etching itself into your soul. Split Jaw did something worse. It hollowed me, left space behind. made room for something else. Something still crawling its way up through those tunnels. It doesn't want to kill me. It wants me to bring it others. I hear them in my sleep now, all the lost ones. Caleb, Uncle Hollis, miners who never made it back. They whisper from inside the walls. And they beg me not to do what I know I'm about to do. But it's too late, because last night my hands moved on their own. Wrote directions, coordinates, an invitation. And today, 3 hikers walked into the diner, passing through town on their way to check out that old mine they found on Reddit. I gave them a smile, told them to bring good flashlights, told them I'd seen it myself, that it was worth it. And when they left, I felt the shadow curl around my spine again. Purring. Content. Not finished. Never finished. Just fed. For now. There's an old saying in Ashfern Hollow. If you see the crooked boy once, you're unlucky. If you see him twice, you're marked. If you see him a third time, run. They say he walks with one leg bent backwards, like it was snapped wrong and never healed. They say his smile is wide enough to split the jaw. They say he doesn't talk. Not with words. But you'll know when he wants something. Because your bones will start to bend. My cousin Marla saw him first. It was summer of '97. I remember because the cicadas were so loud that year they drowned out the church bells. Marla was 12, stubborn as a mule and twice as sharp. She and I used to hike through Ashfern Hollow looking for arrowheads or old moonshiner bottles. She loved that forest more than anything. Said it felt like stepping into another world. That's where she saw him. She didn't tell me right away. I had to drag it out of her after she stopped sleeping, started scratching at her arms like something was crawling under her skin. Mama said it was nerves. I knew better. One night, Marla came into my room, pale as moonlight, and said, "He's outside the window." I looked. Nothing there. She whispered, "He's not always visible, but I can feel him now. In my joints." I thought she was losing it, until I saw him too. It was dusk. I'd gone out by myself to collect kindling. Ashfern was quiet, too quiet.
No birds. No bugs.
Just the sound of my own feet and the heavy hush of trees holding their breath. Then I saw him, standing between 2 leaning ash trees. He was tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that bent wrong. His left arm reached backward, bent at the elbow like it had grown that way. His right leg dragged slightly behind him, knee joint twisted completely around. And his head, too large for his frame, lolled to the side as though the neck had melted inside. His face, I don't know if it was a face. 2 black slits for eyes.
No sé.
And a smile. Why, all the way to the ears. He didn't blink, didn't move, just watched. And then he twitched, like a spider deciding whether or not to pounce. I ran. Didn't stop until I reached home. I didn't tell Marla right away, but when I did, her eyes filled with tears. "That's twice," she whispered. "Now you're marked too. What does that mean?" She only said, "Don't let him bend you." That night, the bones in her left hand swelled. Doctors called it juvenile arthritis. But I saw how it bent. Sharp angles like bird wings folding the wrong way. Like his arm. After that summer, Marla never walked the same. Her spine began to twist little by little. First a hunch, then a curve. Then her neck began to lean permanently to one side, just like his. The doctors called it scoliosis, severe, sudden onset. But we knew better. We knew the crooked boy had marked her. And me? I was next. It started with dreams. I'd wake up with my arms numb, twisted beneath me at wrong angles. My legs ached like they'd run marathons. Once, I woke to find my left foot pointed completely sideways. No injury, no pain. But for 10 full minutes, I couldn't move it back. And always, in the dream, he stood at the tree line, watching, grinning. Sometimes he moved closer. One step, just one. But the ground creaked under his foot like old wood. One night, I told Grandpa Emmett. He was quiet for a long while. Then he took out a bottle of peach shine from under the sink and 2 chipped mugs. poured us each a heavy swig. You kids weren't supposed to see him, he said. We buried him deep enough. My stomach turned cold. What do you mean, buried? Emmett stared into his glass. The crooked boy was real once. Long time ago. Born twisted. Body all wrong. Folks said he should have died at birth, but he didn't. He grew. I asked what happened. His daddy was a preacher. Tried to beat the devil out of him. Said the child's bones were a curse. That every bend was a sin. Grandpa paused, swallowing hard. When the boy turned 10, he disappeared. His daddy said he ran off into the woods. Others weren't so sure. He didn't finish that thought. Just said, when we found him weeks later, he weren't right. All angles. Arms like willow branches. Mouth stretched to breaking. But alive. I asked what they did. His eyes didn't leave the fire. Some things you don't let grow. That was all he'd say. The next night, Marla vanished. We searched the woods. All of us. Whole town turned out. Dogs, lanterns, volunteers combing Ash Fern Hollow until dawn.
No trace.
Except one thing, her shoes. Neatly placed side by side at the base of the 2 ash trees. And in the dirt between them, a handprint. Too big for her. Too small for a man. And bent at the wrist like it had no bones at all. After Marla disappeared, I stopped going outside after dark. I kept my windows shut, my doors bolted, and a knife under my pillow, though deep down, I knew a knife wouldn't do a thing against something like him. The crooked boy doesn't break in. He waits. He invites you out. He makes you curious. And when you're weak, tired, or grieving, that's when he bends you toward him. I started seeing him more often. Not fully, just glimpses. A twisted shadow in the edge of my mirror. A reflection in a puddle where there was no one standing. Sometimes I'd wake to the sound of joints cracking in the hallway. Sharp, unnatural snaps. Like wet sticks being broken one by one. The floorboards never creaked under those steps. Because he doesn't walk. He drags. Then came the letters. Folded notes slipped under my door.
No posti.
No footprints outside. Each one written in shaky, looping script, as if the hand that held the pen couldn't quite grasp how fingers were supposed to bend. The first said, "You've seen me twice. You know what comes next." The second, "She's not gone, just shaped." And the third, "It's your turn now." That night, I woke to find my arms folded behind me in a way they shouldn't be. Shoulder screaming, wrist bent so far back I thought it had snapped. But there was no pain, just pressure. Like someone was showing me how it felt. Like he was guiding the movement. I tried to leave town after that. Packed a bag, got in the truck, and drove east until the hills flattened. I was almost to Charleston when I saw him again. Not in the woods this time. Not in the mirror. In the road. Standing dead center in the lane. Arms bent. Mouth open. His back arched like someone had hooked a wire into his spine and pulled. I slammed the brakes. Screamed. And he vanished. When I looked in the mirror, I saw myself. Mouth wide. Arms twisted. One leg already beginning to drag. I turned the truck around. Because I knew then what Emmett hadn't said. You can't run from a crooked shadow when it's growing inside you. I made it back to Ash Fern just before midnight. The town was still the kind of quiet that sits wrong on your skin.
No porch lights.
No TVs glowing through windows. Even the dogs, the ones that bark at ghosts and wind, were silent. The woods at the edge of town looked different. Wider. Hungrier. Like they'd grown in the week I was gone. I walked to the 2 leaning ash trees. The ones where we'd found Marla's shoes. And I waited. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for the fog to creep low across the ground. Long enough for my knees to start aching like someone was twisting them from inside. Then I heard it. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Creaking. Like a rope swing in slow wind. Like a door opening without hinges. Like a rib cage groaning under too much weight. And there he was. Stepping from the dark between trees, or folding out of it. His limbs bent further than I remembered. one arm now curled up and over his shoulder like a handle. His fingers dragged behind him like dropped silverware. His head tilted the other way now, as though someone had snapped it in reverse. And his smile, it had grown. His mouth opened, and something inside crawled. A second grin. The third. Teeth, but not his. Teeth like he'd collected them. Then he pointed at me, and I bent. Hard. I fell to my knees. My spine arched backward, every vertebrae popping like firecrackers. My left arm curled in on itself, elbow reversed, fingers folding backward like broken sticks. Couldn't scream, couldn't move. Then came the voice, not from him, but from the trees themselves. You saw me once. I marked your blood. You saw me twice. I took her form. The third time, he leaned close, his face nearly against mine. You become. I woke up in my bed. First, I thought it had all been a dream, until I looked in the mirror. My right leg bent slightly inward now. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but I feel it. Every time I walk. A pull, a creak, and at night my jaw aches, like it's trying to smile too wide. I stopped going into town after that. Stopped taking calls. Stopped answering the knocks at the door, even when I knew it was family. Even when I heard their voices. Because the crooked boy doesn't just bend bodies. He mimics. I saw Emmett once more before he died. He came to the house with a shotgun in one hand and a rusted, leather-bound book in the other. Didn't say hello. Just placed the book on my kitchen table and muttered, "Only way to stop it is not to feed it." I asked what that meant, but he was already walking away. Inside the book were journal entries, sketches, hand-drawn sigils. All from the people who tried to kill the crooked boy before and failed. Pages described rituals. Bones wrapped in ash leaves, iron nails driven into bark, blood given willingly. And always the same warning, written over and over. Don't look 3 times. Never bend for him. But it was too late for me. The bending had already started. Last week, I found something in my yard. Marla's voice, whispering my name from the trees. And her smile, buried beneath the roots, stretching wide through the dirt like fungus. Her body was never found. But I know now she didn't vanish. She joined him. She is part of him. They all are. Every person who sees him a third time gets folded in, twisted, stored, worn like skin when he wants to walk the world. Tonight, my arms are locked behind my back. Can't reach my phone. Legs dragging, teeth grinding, smile wide, wider. I'm not writing this with my hands anymore. The pen floats crooked in the air. Something is whispering the words as I think them. No more dreams now. Only bending. Only becoming. If you've seen him, even once, turn away, and don't ever look back. Coal Ridge ain't on most maps anymore. Too many missing hikers. Too many stories. Most locals won't say the name aloud after dark. Because up there, in the highest stretch of rock above the old timber line, there are eyes. Not animals. Not people. Just eyes. Watching. Blinking. Moving between trees that should never cast shadows at night. My brother Sawyer disappeared up there in the fall of 2009. Said he was going to camp overnight at the summit. Take pictures of the valley in moonlight, something about long exposure and the real Appalachian sky. He never came back. What came down 2 days later wasn't Sawyer. Not really. It looked like him, right down to the scar on his chin and the freckle under his left eye. But when I hugged him, he felt cold, like river rock. And he didn't blink. Not once. Mama knew right away. She clutched her rosary so hard it snapped. Wouldn't look him in the face. Just kept whispering prayers in the hallway while he stood in the kitchen, staring out the window at nothing. He didn't speak for 2 whole days. When he finally did, his voice was wrong, dry, hollow, like a breath through dead leaves. And all he said was, "They see you now too." Coal Ridge was off-limits growing up. Not because of bears or cliffs or old mining shafts, but because of the stories. Lights moving through the trees with no source. Whispers just below hearing. Eyes shining in daylight. People who climbed up and came back with their eyes different. The oldest tale goes like this. The ridge watches. And when it sees something it likes, it keeps it. The eyes have been seen for generations. Always pairs, sometimes close to the ground, sometimes 15 feet up. Sometimes in sets of 3 or 4, blinking out of sync. My grandfather said once, "There's more looking back out there than there is sky." And when I told him Sawyer came home with no memory of the trip, and eyes that never needed to blink, he went pale and said, "That boy's just wearing your brother's skin." One night, a week after Sawyer's return, I woke to find him standing at the foot of my bed. His eyes were open, but they weren't his eyes. They were too round, too still. And behind them, in the dark, I swear I saw something move, something coiled. He opened his mouth and dirt poured out, black, dry, full of roots. Then he turned and walked into the woods barefoot. Didn't come back. This time he stayed gone. But I couldn't sleep after that, because every time I closed my eyes, I saw the ridge. And it was blinking. I tried to forget. Really, I did. Burned Sawyer's clothes. Deleted his photos. Told myself grief was a trickster. That I'd imagined the dirt, the staring, the thing wearing my brother's body like a shirt too tight in the shoulders. But the dreams didn't stop. And neither did the eyes. They started small. 2 pinpricks of silver outside the kitchen window one night. They didn't move. Didn't blink. Just watched. Then for next night. Then a dozen. Each set perfectly still. Perfectly patient. The sheriff said it was owls. Some migratory pattern. Maybe deer, reflecting the moonlight. But deer don't climb trees. And owls don't hum. Because that's what I heard next. Low and constant. Like the sound you feel more in your chest than your ears. Like coal breathing. Came from the tree line. Then from under the house. Then from inside the walls. I found an old journal in Grandpa's shed. Wrapped in butcher paper. Sealed with twine. Hidden behind an old tackle box. Inside were accounts dating back to the 1940s. All from people who'd gone near Coal Ridge and come back wrong. Teachers. Preachers. Hunters. A woman who'd been missing for 6 years and walked out of the forest with no pulse but eyes that glowed red in the dark. One passage was underlined twice. Don't make eye contact. It's an invitation. Another said, the longer they watch, the less you remember who you were. And the last one, if you feel like you're being watched, you already are. I tried to go back up the ridge last October. To find Sawyer. To know. The trees were taller than I remembered. Too tall for this part of the range. And wrong, twisted, like something had been pushing against them from the inside. About a mile in, I found a clearing full of animal bones. Arranged in a spiral. At the center, a deer skull with 7 pairs of eyes carved into the bone. All facing outward. That's when I heard Sawyer's voice. Coming from every direction at once. Calling my name. Begging me to look. I didn't. I ran. Branches scraped at my face. Roots tripped me. But I kept my eyes low and never looked back. Not even when the humming grew louder. Not even when the trees began to blink. I made it back to my truck at the base of the ridge just before sunrise. Clothes torn. Face bleeding. Knees raw from the falls. And in the rearview mirror, as I sat trembling behind the wheel, I saw eyes watching from the tree line. Too many. Too high. Some blinked sideways. Some blinked inward. I didn't look directly at them. Couldn't. Because something deep in my bones whispered, if you see them fully, they'll see you forever. That night, I dreamed I was buried alive. But not in dirt, in sight. Thousands of pupils staring through the coffin walls.
No lids.
No rest. Just gaze. And then, contact. One set of eyes locked with mine. And I sank into them. Not metaphorically. I felt my soul pulled forward, deeper and deeper into something wide and watching. When I woke up, my own eyes burned. For a full hour I couldn't close them. The dreams became more frequent after that. Sawyer started showing up in them, but it wasn't him, not really. He moved stiffly, smiled too slowly, and his eyes weren't eyes anymore, just endless silver voids, mirrors. And in those mirrors, I saw myself, standing where he stood, mouth open, hands trembling, eyes hollow. He whispered to me, same words, every time. It sees through you now. That's when I noticed things changing in the house. Mirrors started fogging even without steam. Reflections lagged, showing me blinking after I'd already done it. My dog, Jasper, stopped going near the windows. He'd sit and growl low in his throat, staring at corners of the ceiling. I covered every reflective surface. But it didn't matter, because I didn't need glass to know I was being watched. I could feel it in my teeth. Pressure. A humming. Presence behind my eyes. I called the old ranger who used to patrol Coal Ridge, a man named Randall Price. Took me 2 weeks to find him. He answered the phone with no hello, just a tired voice saying, "You went up there? Didn't you?" I asked him what they were. He said, "They were here before the trees, before the stars even settled right. They don't want land. They don't want blood. They want to witness. And once they look at you long enough, there ain't much of you left." I asked how to stop them. His response chilled me to the root. "You don't. You just stop looking back." Then he hung up. I haven't been able to reach him since. I heard he disappeared, left his boots and clothes at the edge of the ridge, and a note that simply read, I blinked. 2 days after I spoke to Ranger Price, I found a new mirror in my house. I didn't put it there, didn't buy it, didn't own it. A small oval frame, antique, dark wood, hanging perfectly centered above the fireplace where nothing had hung before.
No ok. Nonal.
Just there. First, I covered it with a blanket. But the next morning, the blanket was folded neatly at the base of the hearth, and the mirror was shining clean.
No dust. No smudges.
Just a reflection that didn't match the room. In the glass, I saw myself standing still. But behind me, eyes, in rows, blinking slowly, some sideways, some vertically, some in impossible, spiraling patterns that made my brain feel wet. And then my reflection smiled. But I wasn't smiling. That night, I packed a bag. I was ready to run. Anywhere. Somewhere flat, far from mountains, far from ridgelines. But when I stepped outside, the sky was full of eyes. No stars. Just watching. The moon blinked. And in the trees, Sawyer, or something wearing his shape. He moved closer, limbs jerking, neck stiff. He opened his mouth and light poured out. Too bright to look at, too terrible to look away. And in the center of that light, I saw the ridge. Alive, breathing, his treetops moving like fingers, the shadows pulsing like a heartbeat. And the eyes, my God, the eyes, opening all along the forest floor, the cliffs, the sky. And each one whispered, not in sound, but in sensation. You belong to the gaze. Collapsed. Woke up in my bed again. Sheets damp with sweat. The mirror still hanging above the fireplace. But now, I can't see myself in it anymore. Only Sawyer. Smiling. Watching. And behind him, the forest. Always blinking. Always waiting. I don't leave the house now. What's the point? I've seen them 3 times. The threshold's been crossed. Ranger Price was right, you don't survive it. You just stop being you. Piece by piece. Sight by sight. Tomorrow is the anniversary of Sawyer's first hike. I already know what's going to happen. The mirror will shatter. The windows will fill with eyes. And I'll feel myself pulled upward. Not physically, but visually. Until there's nothing left of me but a watcher, staring through the glass from the other side. I woke this morning without my reflection. It's not that the mirrors are broken. They're all still here. Dozens of them now. More than I remember owning. But when I pass by, there's just nothing looking back.
No outline.
No eyes. Just the room behind me. Empty. Still. Except one mirror. The one above the fireplace. That one does show me, but not how I am now. It shows me standing at the edge of Coal Ridge, mouth open, arms slack, eyes wide and glowing, like twin moons reflecting a sky that never belonged to Earth. I haven't spoken in days. My throat doesn't work like it used to. Sometimes I hear others speaking through me. Not with words, but in pulses, in light, in images that flash behind my eyelids when I try to rest. I see Sawyer, standing beneath the ridge, eyes turned inward, his shadow detached and crawling ahead of him like a dog returning home. And I see what waits at the top. Not a creature, not a god, but a lens, an aperture carved from the spine of the world itself. A watching thing, endless, hungrier than death, feeding not on flesh, but awareness. It watches you until you're not you anymore, until you're just another eye in the forest. I know what's next. Tonight, I'll walk to the tree line. I won't blink. I won't run, because there's no point. You can't hide from what sees from inside you. And when I reach the top, I'll leave my boots by the trail, just like Ranger Price did. And I'll open, like a shutter, like a wound, like a truth too big for the sky to hold. If you hike Coal Ridge and you see the trees blink, turn around. Don't look again, because they only need 3 gazes to take you. And if you see your reflection smile before you do, it's already too late. Everyone hears it at least once. The singing from the trees in Yellowcap Holler. Soft, sweet, like a lullaby your grandmother used to hum, even if she never did. It comes when the fog rolls low and the light turns gold, usually just before dusk. And if you follow it, if you step into the trees, you don't come out right. They say the first person to go missing was old Abe McCready, back in 1919. He followed the song on a misty September evening, told his wife he was just going out for firewood. He never came back. When they searched for him, they found 2 things. His hat, resting on a moss-covered stump, a small trail of teeth, laid in a perfect spiral around it. The forest was quiet that day, too quiet, as though it had just finished singing. Folks in Yellowcap Holler learned to fear that melody. They called it the fog tune or the mouth's lullaby. Some said it was a spirit, others said it was the land itself, tired of being cut, mined, and carved. By the time I was born, it had become a rule, not a story. If you hear the song, shut the windows, lock the doors, and whatever you do, don't hum along. But not everyone listens. Not everyone can. I was 16 the first time I heard it. Late summer. Cicadas buzzing so loud it made your teeth itch. I'd just gotten back from helping fix fence posts down by Bailey Creek when the fog rolled in, thick and yellow like buttermilk gone sour. And then, the singing started. It was faint, almost too faint to notice at first. But the tune, God help me, it felt familiar, like something buried in my bones, like a memory I never made. It came from the trees just beyond our property line. A high, lonesome melody that made the hair on my neck stand straight. I remember standing at the back screen door, heart pounding, fingers curled around the handle. I wanted to step outside, not because I was curious, but because the song wanted me to. Pulled, persuaded. Then my dad grabbed my shoulder hard enough to leave a bruise and said, "Get away from that door. That ain't for us." I didn't argue. I just nodded. And I swear, for half a second I heard the song change key, like it had noticed me, and wasn't done. After that night, things started going strange. Not big things, not at first, but little oddities that made your stomach twist before your brain caught up. Mom started humming in her sleep. Always the same melody, same pace, even if she hadn't heard it. One morning, all the dogs in town, every single one, went silent at once. Just stood staring at the tree-line, ears back, tails down, as if they heard something we couldn't. And the fog? It stopped burning off by mid-morning. Instead, it lingered, hovered around the edges of the holler like it was waiting for something. Or someone. Dad wouldn't talk about it. said some things weren't meant to be understood. But Grandpa Amos, he knew. He'd fought in Korea, worked the mines, survived a lightning strike, and outlived 2 wives. But even he turned pale when I asked him about the singing. I heard it once, he said, chewing the edge of his pipe. Back when I was no older than you. Was out huntin'. Fog came in faster than it had any right to. And then, I heard it. I asked what he did. He looked me dead in the eye and said, I ran. And when I got home, I stuffed cotton in my ears for 3 nights straight. Then softer, it don't want to kill you, son. It wants to keep you. Sing you hollow. A few days later, it sang again. This time, I wasn't alone. My friend Lena and I were down by Yellowcap Creek, skipping stones when the mist rolled in fast. Not drifting like normal fog, but slithering, low and fast. And then the song started. Lena turned her head like she'd heard her name whispered from the trees. I remember this, she said, voice dreamy, but she couldn't have. She'd never heard it before. She started walking toward the treeline. I grabbed her arm. She didn't resist, just looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, It sounds like my mama. Her mama had died 5 years earlier. We ran. Didn't stop until we hit her porch. And even then, we could still hear it. Distant now, but watching. Lena stopped speaking a week later. Wouldn't eat. Wouldn't sleep. Just stared out her window at the woods and mouthed a tune only she could hear. Her dad found her bed empty 2 nights after that. Only her teeth remained, laid in a spiral on the floor, just like Abe McCready's. After Lena disappeared, nobody spoke her name. The whole holler got real quiet. Even the church closed its doors for a few weeks. Reverend Mathers said he was seeking answers in silence. But folks said he'd started hearing the song in the walls of the chapel. Said the hymns sounded different after that. Off-key, hollow, like someone else was singing with him from inside the organ pipes. When he finally came back, he wore cotton in his ears. Always, I tried to stay away from the woods. But it's hard to live in Yellowcap Holler without being near trees. They're everywhere. You breathe pine and fern like air. You hear the branches creak like bones at night. You learn to listen without really listening. But the song finds its way in. Through dreams. Through rain on the roof. Through the scent of something sweet on the wind. One night, I woke up humming. Not just any tune, the tune. Same as Lena. Same as Mom. I bit down on my tongue till I tasted blood just to stop the melody. That's when I saw her, standing in the yard, barefoot in the grass. Lena, or something wearing her. She didn't move right, swayed like tall grass in wind that wasn't there. Her head cocked just a little too far. Her mouth opened, and the tune spilled out like smoke. Behind her, in the fog at the tree line, I saw more shapes. Not people. Not exactly. Tall. Thin. Some too many joints. Some none at all. And all of them were singing. Different voices, same tune. Soft. Like a lullaby from something with no mouth. Grandpa Amos was waiting for me at the kitchen table. He had a shotgun on his lap and a bottle of oil in his hand. They're calling now, he said. Who? I asked, though I already knew. The ones before the soil, he said. The ones that slept under Yellowcap when it was just stone and stars. He poured a circle of salt around himself. Don't follow the song, he said. Not even in memory. I never saw him again. Next morning, I found the shotgun, the salt scattered, and a smear of muddy footprints leading toward the woods, and a single molar on the porch, wrapped in old cloth. I tried to leave Yellowcap, packed what I could, threw it in the truck and drove west, fast, without stopping. Radio off, windows up, but about 30 miles out, the road just vanished. Not literally, not like some portal or sci-fi trick, just ended. 1 second there was pavement, the next I was staring at a wall of trees where none should have been. No detour, no dirt path, just thick, yellow fog rolling low between trunks I didn't recognize. I blinked, and heard it again. The song. Clear. Close. This time it wasn't sweet. It was hungry, like a mother humming over an empty cradle, like a voice meant to fill you, then hollow you out. I threw the truck in reverse and didn't stop until I rolled back into the holler. As I passed the sign that says "Welcome to Yellowcap," the fog behind me disappeared, as if it had never been there, as if I'd never left. That night, I started to remember things that didn't belong to me. Memories of children I'd never met, woods I'd never walked, lullabies I'd never heard until now sung in my voice. My reflection started humming without me. Once, I caught it swaying, even though I was standing still. I don't look in mirrors anymore. I tried to fight it. Earplugs, noise machines, even poured wax in my ears once, just to see if it would help. But the song isn't just sound anymore. It's inside me, in the blood, in the teeth. They started loosening a week ago, one by one. No pain, just falling out. I left them in a box on the windowsill. Next morning they were gone. And in their place, moss, and a note, written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Almost ready. I know what it's doing. I know. It's not killing people. It's rewriting them, turning them into vessels for whatever it is that sings from the soil when the fog rolls in. When someone hears it 3 times, truly hears it, they don't disappear. They just start singing back. The 3rd time I heard the song, I didn't run. I stood barefoot on the porch as the fog rolled in, thick and gold and humming with something ancient. And I let it fill me. My skin prickled. My jaw trembled. My feet began to sway to a rhythm older than memory. I felt peaceful, not happy, not sad, just ready. Behind the mist, I saw them coming. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Once people, now twisted into tall, whisper-thin silhouettes. Moss draped from their arms. Teeth gleamed like pearls scattered along the forest floor. Some dragged bones behind them. Others carried them inside their bellies, where the shape of skulls pressed against the skin like knuckles through wet cloth. Lena was among them. She still looked like herself, mostly, except for her mouth, which now stretched from cheek to cheek. She didn't speak. She sang. And I joined her. It wasn't a choice. Not really. Because the thing in Yellowcap doesn't ask. It sings. And your body remembers the tune before your soul does. Your bones shift to the beat. Your tongue hums along even when you bite down on it. Your mind? It fades into the fog, soft and warm, like a child curling up inside an old lullaby. This morning, I woke beneath the ash trees. Hands stained green, mouth full of petals. And when I looked down, I saw the newest offering. A set of footprints. Small, bare, leading from the woods to a child's bedroom window. The glass was open. The music had started again. If you're reading this, and the song seems familiar, it's too late. You've already heard it once. Don't seek it. Don't hum it. And whatever you do, don't listen a 3rd time. Because the thing in Yellowcap Holler doesn't want you dead. It wants you to sing. Forever. Up near the peak of Rattler's Knob, just past the shale drop and the dead pine grove, there's a place no one talks about in daylight. Locals call it the skin door.
No hinges. No fram.
Just a flap of stitched-together leather nailed to a stone wall where no door should be. No one's seen what's behind it, because the ones who open it never come back whole. I first heard about the skin door from my Uncle Duke, back when I was 9 and still dumb enough to think monsters stayed in books. He told me about it one night after a thunderstorm knocked out the power. We were sitting by lantern light, the kind that flickers more than it glows, and he leaned in close like he was telling me how he'd buried treasure. "You hike past the dead pines," he whispered, "and you'll see it on the cliff wall. Looks like a door, but it breathes sometimes. Like it's waitin'. Waitin' for what?" I asked. Duke didn't blink. "A new covering." I thought it was a story. A bad one. Meant to scare a kid into staying close to camp. Until I found it myself. I was 17 and running from a fight with my father. The kind of yelling that leaves cracks in the walls and holes in your memory. I grabbed a flashlight and took off into the hills, heading toward the old hunting trail that winds around Rattler's Knob. I didn't mean to go that far, but anger has a way of turning hours into minutes, and that's when I saw it. Just beyond a split in the rock face where no trail should have led. A sheet of something not quite skin, nailed to stone with what looked like finger bones. It fluttered in the wind, except there was no wind. My flashlight flickered, the flap twitched, and in that instant, I smelled something that has never left me. Tanned leather, old blood, and something that rots without ever dying. I should have turned around, but something pulled me closer. Not physically, not a sound, not even a whisper, just a feeling, like the door knew my name. I got close enough to see stitching. Human stitching. Crude, black thread holding together patches of different shades. Pale, freckled, burned, tattooed. It was skin, or had been, and at the center a handprint, pressed from the inside, still wet. I stepped back, hard. My foot slipped on loose shale and I nearly went tumbling, but I caught myself, heart thudding, breath tight. That thing, it wasn't just hanging there. It moved. It watched. No eyes, but I could feel it studying me, the way a tailor might measure someone for a suit they hadn't agreed to wear. I turned and ran. Didn't stop until I hit the fire road. Didn't speak of it. Not for years. But I never forgot the sound it made. A soft, wet creak. Like old leather shoes stretching on someone else's feet. I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Until I started noticing changes. My dreams got worse. I'd see a stitched flap swinging in the dark, and something behind it would knock once, then drag its fingers slowly across the inside. Worse still were the mirrors. My skin started looking off, too tight in places, too loose in others. A patch on my thigh took on a different tone, darker, smoother.
No scar.
No mark, just a small square like someone had swapped it out. I asked the doctor. He said it was nothing. Hormones. Lighting. But I knew. The skin door hadn't let me go. A month later, Uncle Duke went missing. Search party found his boots and his coat up by Rattler's Knob, just before the stone drop. Nothing else. No blood.
No struggle.
Just his skin. Laid flat. Folded like a shirt. Empty. That's when I started digging. Talked to some old-timers down at the bait shop. One of them, Elmer Dooley, hadn't been up the knob in 50 years. Said he used to poach elk up there until he saw the flap breathing. I asked him what it was. He downed his beer and whispered, "That ain't a door you walk through. It's a door that wears you." I didn't sleep that night, not because of fear, but because something started knocking. From inside my closet. 3 soft knocks, then a drag, like fingernails, and a hum. A tune I didn't know but my skin did. I moved out of state 2 weeks later. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't pack much. Just grabbed my truck keys and drove until the mountains flattened out behind me and the trees started looking less like witnesses. I found a small apartment in Kentucky, got a job at a hardware store, and tried to convince myself that none of it had been real. For a while I believed it, until I found the patch. It was on my lower back. Skin slightly discolored, a little smoother, shaped like a square that had been sewn in and then absorbed. I'd never had surgery there. No injury. Nothing. It didn't itch. It didn't hurt. But when I pressed it, I felt someone else breathe. I went to a doctor out there. They ran tests, scans, biopsies, said it wasn't my DNA. That part of my skin wasn't mine. Didn't match my blood. Didn't match any known database. They said it was a freak contamination. Suggested tissue graft from a donor I didn't remember receiving. I asked what kind of donor doesn't have a medical record. They didn't answer. I didn't go back. Then came the night the door showed up in my apartment. Not on a wall. Not even attached to anything. Just there. In the corner of my living room. A patchwork flap of leather. Stitched together. Nailed to nothing. And fluttering like it was hung from invisible hinges. It didn't belong. Not in space. Not in time. I closed my eyes, opened them again. It was closer. This time I saw my own handwriting stitched into one of the panels. You walked too close. And just below it, Uncle Duke's tattoo. The little coal miner's pickaxe he'd had inked on his forearm when he turned 20. I could feel it watching me again, sizing me up, measuring, preparing to collect what it had marked. The next morning, the skin door was gone, but the carpet was soaked, not with water, but with something oily and red, like blood that had been drained, boiled, and stored too long. My hands smelled like it for days, and I started hearing the creaking sound in other places. Elevators, restrooms, hospitals, always 3 soft knocks, then the drag, then the breath. I tried burning the patch, the one on my back, used a lighter, heated a knife red hot, even tried bleach. Nothing worked. The skin there didn't blister, didn't welt, just watched, because by then, I was sure of it, the patch wasn't part of me. It was an eye, a hidden one, closed most of the time, but every so often, I'd feel it twitch, like a lid fighting the urge to open, to see. And when it did, just a sliver, I heard things. Not voices, stitching, thread pulling tight, a name being sewn into leather that moved like muscle. I started waking up in new clothes, ones I didn't own, different sizes. Once the tag read D. McCready. I don't know who that is, but when I looked it up, there was a Daniel McCready listed as missing Rattler's Knob, 1974. A local hiker, age 33, never found. I don't think they were looking in the right place. They were looking for a body, not a donor. A week ago, I coughed up a piece of string, black, greasy, curled like it had come from inside my lungs. I ran to the mirror, pulled up my shirt. More patches now. 3. Each a different color, different texture, like someone was making a quilt out of me. My fingers trembled as I touched the newest one. It was freckled. I hadn't had freckles since I was a kid, but I remembered who did. Lena Jacobs, the girl who vanished on the knob when we were 15. She'd had freckles on her arms, and a birthmark in the shape of Tennessee on her shoulder. I had it now, exactly where hers had been. That night, I dreamed of the door again. It stood in the middle of a black room, suspended in air by nothing. It opened slowly. From inside came the sound of laughter, my own laughter, and something stepped out wearing me. Not just my face, not just my skin, but me, my shape, my scars, my speech. And it smiled wide, because it had more room now. I woke up this morning on the porch. Not mine, someone else's, somewhere up in the mountains. My hands were covered in dirt, my mouth full of thread. My back ached where the patches used to be. Now one smooth, seamless stretch of unfamiliar flesh. There was a note in my pocket. One line, stitched into parchment. You are ready to wear. I didn't know what that meant until I saw the mirror. At first, everything looked normal. But the longer I stared, the more it changed. The reflection sagged, then twitched, a ripple under the skin. And then the eyes shifted just slightly, as if something was adjusting from inside, like a hand pressing up behind a mask. I tried to scream, but the sound that came out wasn't mine. It was too deep, too hollow, like a laugh echoing from a throat lined with wax. There are knocks at my door now, soft ones, followed by a drag, like something pulling itself across the porch. And then breathing, slow, heavy.
Familiar.
I don't answer. I just sit in the dark, staring at my hands, waiting for the last patch to settle. Because that's what the skin door does. It doesn't open into a place. It opens into a process. You don't go through it. You become it. And now I'm part of the stitch, part of the garment. The next one who walks too close, who touches the leather flap nailed to stone with bone. They won't hear me scream. They'll hear me welcome them. It started with a smell, rotten earth, wet hair, old iron, coming up from beneath the floorboards in the back of our grandfather's house. a log cabin built before the war, with a root cellar no one had used in decades. The door to it was bolted shut. Always had been. Grandpa said it was to keep the thing down there. He never said what. Grandpa's house always gave me the creeps. Not because it was old, though it was, or because it creaked at night, though it did, but because it felt heavy inside. Like the air was thicker somehow. Like you were breathing through a wet blanket. My brother Eli said it was just age and dust. But I noticed things he didn't. How the family photos were always turned ever so slightly away from the back hallway. How Grandpa never let us walk barefoot in the kitchen, in case it heard your steps. How the dogs would whimper when they got within 5 feet of the cellar door. Ears flat, tails low, paws skidding across the floor as they turned themselves around. The cellar door was thick wood. Iron bolts. 5 of them. The kind you don't just use to keep things out. You use them when you're afraid of what's already in. There were claw marks, too. Long, deep ones. As if something on the inside had tried to claw its way out. The first time I asked Grandpa what was down there, he just spat in a tin cup and said, "It's not what's in there that scares me. It's what it used to be." I never forgot that. The smell started after the first frost. Eli and I had been helping split firewood when we noticed it. A rank, hot stink rising through the floorboards in waves. Earthy and wet, but wrong. Like something long dead trying to remember how to breathe. I thought maybe a pipe had burst. Eli thought it was a dead animal. Grandpa said nothing. Just stood there on the porch with his shotgun resting on his lap and his eyes locked on the cellar door. "Don't open it," he said quietly. "No matter what you hear." That night the thumping started. Soft at first, like someone tapping from below with one knuckle. Then faster, heavier, scratching, scraping, and underneath it all a voice. A woman's. Soft, familiar, calling my name. I didn't sleep that night. The knocking came every 20 minutes like clockwork. 3 knocks, a pause, then that awful scrape like fingernails on wet wood. But it was the voice that really did it. It wasn't random. It was personal. And it sounded like Mama. She died 4 years before in a fire that took most of the barn. We never found her body. But now she was whispering through the floorboards beneath Grandpa's kitchen. "Baby, I'm cold down here. Open the door." I almost did. I stood there at 3:17 a.m., bare feet on the wood, hand on the first iron bolt. Felt warm. Too warm. Like something on the other side was breathing against the wood. But then Grandpa's voice rang out behind me like a gunshot. "Don't." I jumped. Turned. He was standing at the hallway's end in his long johns and coat, holding his old Winchester and aiming it right at me. He didn't lower it. "That thing'll lie to you. That's what it does. Sounds like your mama. Sounds like anyone it can wear like a mask." I backed away, said nothing, just stared at the cellar door, heart pounding. The voice had gone silent, but I swore I saw the wood bulge, like something pressing from the other side. Like the door was breathing. The next day, Grandpa finally told us what was down there, or what had been once. He said it started with a sickness. Back in 1913, his uncle Eli Sr. started hearing voices. Said his dead sister kept visiting him in the orchard. Said she was cold. Said she needed a place to stay. He dug out the root cellar for her. They found him a week later, curled up inside it, eyes missing, tongue bitten clean through. But the voice kept coming, and something else came with it. Whatever was in the cellar now had been buried there by the family long ago. Trapped, sealed, and fed once a year to keep it weak. That year, Grandpa was too old to do the job. That job had come to us. I didn't want to believe it. Not the voice. Not the breathing door. Not the idea that our family had been feeding something buried beneath the kitchen for over a century. But when Grandpa brought out the ledger, a battered old notebook bound in leather and crusted at the edges, everything changed. Each page listed a date, a name, and a tithe. The names weren't strangers. They were relatives. Aunt Marion in 42, Cousin Louis in 65, Grandpa's younger brother, Tom, the one they said ran off with a girl in 79. All of them written in Grandpa's tight, square handwriting. Under tithe. Eli flipped through the book with shaking hands, then slammed it shut. "You're insane," he said. Grandpa just stared at the cellar door. "No," he replied. "I'm what's kept this house quiet." He looked at me then, and I saw something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Fear. Not fear of the cellar. Fear that we wouldn't believe him. That night, the voice returned, but louder, stronger. It spoke with Mama's voice again. But now it was pleading. "Honey, it's dark. I can't move. Please, please help me. I'm so cold." Then it turned angry. "Ungrateful little thing. We nursed you. We carried you. And you'd leave your own mother to rot." The house shook with every word. The lights flickered. From the walls came scratching sounds. Not from inside them, but inside us. I swear I felt something crawling under my skin, just for a second. And in the hallway, the floorboards bulged, like they were about to crack open. Grandpa loaded the shotgun, sat at the table, told us if we didn't want to do it, we could leave. Said the thing would come up eventually, but it would start with him, the one who kept it trapped this long. Eli was already halfway out the door, but I stayed. Something in me said if we left him, none of us would be safe. At midnight, the bolts started unlatching. One by one, by one. Even though none of us were near the door. The first bolt hit the floor with a clang that shook the table. Grandpa didn't flinch. He just kept the shotgun leveled on the cellar door, knuckles white, lips moving silently. Maybe a prayer, maybe something older. The second bolt slid out slow, like it was being eased open from the inside. A low groan followed. Not from wood, but from something beneath it. Thick, wet, like lungs filling with dirt. I turned to Eli. He was frozen, staring wide-eyed at the door like a man watching his own name being written on a headstone. Then the third bolt dropped. Clink. And the whispering started again. But now it wasn't just Mama's voice. It was all of them, layered, overlapping. A chorus of the dead and the taken. "I held you as a baby. We bled in the same dirt. You owe us. Let us out." Grandpa screamed then. Not in fear, but in rage, and fired through the door. The blast cracked the top panel wide open. And that's when we saw it. Just a glimpse. A shape. Not human. Not anymore. Long arms. Gray flesh. Slick and stretched like moldy wax. Jaws too wide. And eyes, dozens of them, embedded across its chest, belly, arms. All blinking in perfect, unnatural rhythm. And in its hands, skin, stretched, still wet, still twitching. It hissed, high and sharp, like wind forced through broken teeth. Grandpa yelled for us to run. Eli bolted. I hesitated. Saw Grandpa shove the final bolt back into place with shaking hands and slam the remaining latches down. Then the thing screamed. The walls buckled. The floor cracked. And the lights went out. When I came to, the cellar door was sealed again. All 5 bolts in place. Grandpa? Gone. Just his shotgun lying on the kitchen floor. And the ledger, now closed, with one new line written in the final page. Tithe E. Caldwell, 2025. His name. I tried to leave the next morning. Loaded the truck. Got halfway down the old logging road before the engine died like it had choked on fog. No signal. No sound. Just the smell again. Stronger now. Rot. Blood. Wet wood. That same iron sting that lingers on a butcher's block long after the meat's gone. And from the back of the house? Knocking. Slow. Measured. And polite. Like something that knew it didn't need to rush. Eli never came back. I don't blame him. I think if I had run faster, if I hadn't looked back, I might have escaped too. But I saw Grandpa's name in that ledger. And I saw mine written right underneath it now. Next Tithe S. Caldwell. In fresh ink. My hand. My writing. But I didn't remember doing it. That night, the cellar whispered again. But not with voices. With memories. I saw Mama holding me after I broke my arm at 6. I saw Grandpa whittling me a toy rifle. I saw every moment of comfort and warmth from my childhood. And then I saw the faces behind those memories. They weren't them. Not really. Just puppets. Sewn together. Worn by something else. Something that needed memories to wear as skin. It doesn't want to eat you. It doesn't want your soul. It wants your shape. Your familiarity. Your voice when it calls to the next one. So here I am. Sitting in Grandpa's chair. Shotgun across my knees. Ledger open. The fires burned low. And I can hear the latches start to creak again. One by one. Slow. Patient. And I know what I have to do. What Grandpa did. What the family's done for generations. Because it never dies. It only waits. Until someone forgets to lock the bolts. Or starts to believe the voice is really their mama again. If you come to this house, and you smell wet earth and rust, leave. And if you hear knocking, don't answer. Because the thing in the root cellar, it remembers you now. They say if you hike past Fiddler Pass after sundown, you'll hear it. A single violin, off-key, playing a tune no one alive remembers. And under that, a voice whispering just behind your ear. It never speaks in words. It speaks in regret. And if you stop to listen, you'll never find your way back out. Because the mountain keeps what listens too long. The first time I heard the music, I thought it was the wind. You ever hear trees moan in winter? That slow, breathy groan when the branches sway and the bark stretches like tired bones? That's what it sounded like at first. But then the notes sharpened. Strings. 3, maybe 4. Then a slow, dragging bow stroke. Too deliberate to be the wind. I froze on the trail, halfway up Fiddler Pass. Boot halfway into a patch of frozen moss. And I heard it again. A single violin playing a tune that didn't have rhythm, didn't have melody, just a shape. Something that sank into your ears and unspooled behind your eyes. Locals have always avoided the pass at night. Not because it's dangerous, though it is, or steep, which it is, but because of the whisper. The one that trails the fiddle tune. People say it's not in any language they know, but they understand it all the same. Like it's whispering your own guilt back to you. Like it knows what you regret, even if you don't. Back in 1961, 3 hikers vanished up there. Only thing they found was a recorder left on a rock. Battery long dead, but the tape still worked. You can find the audio if you know the right dark corner of the web. I listened once, just static at first. Then the fiddle, broken, bleeding between notes, and under it a voice, not quite human, breathing like a man learning how to speak again. My granddad used to say Fiddler Pass wasn't always cursed. Said a man once lived up there during the Civil War. A Confederate deserter with a busted leg and a fiddle made from coffin wood. Folks say he was half dead from fever, but the music kept him alive. Until a patrol found him hiding in a cave and burned him alive inside it. Problem was, he didn't stop playing. People still hear the music near that cave. Some say he's still in there. Blackened bones wrapped around a charred fiddle, whispering to the trees. Others say he walks now. Not as a ghost. Not as a man. But as a regret with legs. I should have turned back. That's what I keep telling myself. But something about the tune held me, not in a magical way, not like in stories. It didn't enchant me. It made me remember things I hadn't thought about in years. The fight I had with Mom the night before she died. The girl I left in Knoxville without a word. The dog I hit with the truck when I was 13 and never told anyone. Each step I took up that trail, the violin played a little louder. And the whisper got closer. Still no words. Just regret curling behind my ear like warm breath. I crested the ridge at twilight. The trees opened up, revealing a long stretch of rock and dead pine leading to an old logging road that hasn't been used since the 40s. That's where I saw him, the fiddler, or something shaped like one. He stood in the clearing, long coat frayed at the bottom, head bowed, violin cradled beneath what used to be a chin. His skin was blackened, not rotted, charred. His bow hand moved slow, steady, like the music didn't come from him, but through him. And behind him, a line of others. 5, no 7 of them. All standing still. All with their eyes closed. All mouthing the same silent words in time with the bow strokes. I stepped back. The music stumbled just once, like I'd interrupted something ancient. And then the fiddler raised his head. He didn't have eyes, just hollow sockets filled with smoke. But somehow, I knew he was looking at me. And in my head, not in my ears, the whisper finally formed a word. Stay. I turned and ran, slipped twice on the trail, tore my knee open on a root, but I didn't stop. The tune followed me all the way down the switchbacks, warping, unraveling into shrieks that sounded like broken glass dragged across a tombstone. And the whisper? It laughed. Not cruelly, just knowingly. When I reached my truck, I threw myself inside, locked the doors, and looked in the mirror. My lips were moving, mouthing the same word. Stay. I tried everything to stop the song. Turned off the radio. Stopped listening to music. Closed my windows tight. But the whisper never left. It lived in my head like a second heartbeat. Constant, relentless. Night it changed. From pleading to warning. From soft to urgent. Sometimes, I'd wake to find my fingers twitching, as if I was playing a fiddle no one else could hear. A week after I heard the whisper say, stay, my best friend, Ben, vanished. We'd been hiking nearby. He was always the brave one, the one who'd go off-trail, explore caves no one dared. That day, he took a different path up Fiddler Pass. I waited at the bottom. Hours passed. No Ben. No call. No sign. The search party found his pack at the cave near the peak. Open. Empty. And a single scrap of paper nailed to a tree. On it, a note, scrawled in shaky handwriting. The music won't stop. It's calling us all. No one ever found Ben. And now I wonder, what happens to those who listen too long? What happens to those who hear the whisper and don't run? Because sometimes, I swear I feel strings pulling inside me, like someone else is bowing a violin beneath my skin. And if you stand still at the pass after sundown, if you listen close enough, you might hear the music and feel the whisper, calling you. The nights grew colder. I found myself unable to sleep. Every shadow seemed to curl toward the sound of the fiddle. Even the stars outside my window flickered like dying notes. One night I followed the music. Not the whisper, the music itself. It led me back to Fiddler Pass, the same trail I'd fled weeks before. When I reached the clearing beneath the dead pines, the air was thick with smoke and something metallic, like old blood. The fiddler was there, his bow slicing through the air, pulling the strings of his violin with unnatural grace. His eyes were empty pits, but he looked at me, and the music changed. The tune became a dirge, slow and sorrowful. I felt my knees buckle. 1,000 voices swirled around me, chanting words I couldn't understand but felt deep in my bones. Stay. Join us. Never leave. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My hands lifted, not of their own will. The bow was in my grip, the violin under my chin, and I was playing. The pass was alive with music. When I came to, the sun was rising. The fiddle and fiddler were gone, but my hands still ached. And the whisper? It was inside me now, waiting, watching. It's been 3 weeks since that night. I haven't left the house much. I can't. Every time I try, the music returns. Not in my ears, in my mind. Sometimes, I swear I hear the bow scrape against strings even when I'm alone. My fingers twitch. My throat tightens. I feel the pull of the pass. I don't know how much longer I have. The whisper grows louder every day. Sometimes it calls my name. Sometimes it tells me secrets I don't want to know. Sometimes it just waits. And I know when the music finally finishes, I'll be part of the song. If you ever hike Fiddler Pass and hear the violin in the trees, don't stop. Don't listen. And definitely don't stay. Because the mountain remembers. It never forgets. And those who listen too long are never found again. They say the hollow man waits at the edge of Pine Ridge. Not a man. Not a ghost. Something between. A shadow with shape. An empty shell that wears your clothes and your face but doesn't carry your soul. I first heard about the hollow man when I was 8. Old Miss Lorraine told me by the fire, her hands trembling as she rocked back and forth. They say he's a man who lost his shadow to the mountain, she whispered. Lost it, and got trapped between this world and the next. The hollow man walks Pine Ridge when the fog rolls in thick, wearing the skin of anyone who dares to look too long. Years later, when I was 17, I saw him. Or rather, I saw her. It was a foggy October morning. I was hiking alone near the ridge when the mist swallowed the path behind me. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. A woman, pale as ash, in a faded blue dress. She smiled. Her eyes were empty pits. She looked just like my mother. I called out. No answer. She walked toward me. But her feet didn't touch the ground. The air around her shimmered, like heat rising from a fire. And when she reached me, she placed a hand on my shoulder, cold, hollow, and vanished. I was shaking, lost. My own shadow stretched out in the fog behind me. But it was wrong. Not my shadow. A twisted silhouette. A hollow version of myself. From that day on, I knew the hollow man wasn't a story. He was real. And he was waiting. I couldn't shake the image of her face. My mother's face. Pale and empty, pressed against mine in that silent greeting. I stumbled back down the ridge, heart hammering, lungs burning from the cold air. By the time I reached the trailhead, the fog had lifted, and the sun blinked through yellowing leaves like nothing had happened. But I knew better. I spent the next week asking around town, at Janie's general store, at the VFD station, even at the coffee cart beside the highway, if anyone else had seen her or him. Answers were uneasy smiles and hurried changes of subject. The local paper had run one small note 3 months before. An elderly man found wandering the woods with his clothes turned inside out, mumbling about a face in the mist. He was long gone before anyone could interview him. I drove back up Pine Ridge at dawn, determined to see the hollow man or woman again. I took the old service road that switched back through hemlocks and past abandoned cabins. Every half-mile, the fog thickened, each tree more gnarled than the last. I parked at the old lookout where the ridge crests and you can see 3 states on a clear day. Today, though, all I saw was white. Stepping out of the truck felt like stepping into a cloud. The world muffled. Only my boots on gravel and the low whisper of the wind through needles. I walked toward the cliff edge, expecting to see her standing there, waiting. Instead, I found something else. Footprints. Not mine. Not even human. Too long, too narrow, with a pronounced arch and splayed toes. A reptilian imprint pressed into the wet earth. I followed them down a narrow goat path that clung to the rock face. They led past an overturned picnic table, rusted thermos still half full of bitter coffee, then into a stand of dead pines. The air grew colder, the fog so dense that I could feel droplets collapsing on my skin like tiny weights. Then I saw movement, a shape between trunks. I froze as it stepped into view. A man in a worn flannel shirt and jeans, face hidden by a hood. His shadow, though, was wrong. It stretched not on the ground but upward, curling against the fog like ink in water. I called out, "Hey, are you okay?" His head turned slowly. The hood fell back, and there was no face, just a smooth expanse of pale skin where eyes and mouth should have been. I watched his throat move as if he was trying to speak but produced nothing but silence. My stomach lurched. I stumbled backward, and in that instant his shadow reached out, clinging to mine. My own silhouette seemed to peel away from the ground, stretching upward into the mist. I yanked my foot free and ran, boots sliding on moss and loose rock, the hollow echo of my footsteps chasing me down the mountain. By the time I burst back into daylight, the figure was gone, vanished like a breath. But when I looked down, I saw it. my shadow crisp and clear in the sun, except around the ankle, where it tapered off into nothing. A gap as if someone had bitten a piece away. I drove home in silence, heart pounding in time with the missing beat in my own shadow. At my front door, I paused and looked down. My silhouette on the porch slab was whole again. For now, couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that faceless man or woman, slipping through the fog, their hollow outlines sliding along the ground. My own shadow felt heavy, as though it were carrying someone else's weight. The next morning, I left for Pine Ridge again. I needed answers, some explanation beyond superstition and ghost stories. I took my camera this time, hoping to capture something solid. Footprints, the shadows curl, anything. The service road was empty, but at the lookout I found fresh tracks, those same long, splayed footprints, heading off the edge toward the old logging trail. I followed them, boots crunching on needles and broken rock. The trail narrowed until I had to squeeze past brambles, their thorns snagging my jacket and leaving thin red lines on my forearms. When I broke into a small clearing, I saw a weathered picnic bench and, beneath it, a tattered notebook wedged between the planks. I picked it up. The cover was leather, cracked with age, and the pages yellowed. Inside were hastily scrawled entries. Entry, October 12, 1947. He came at dawn. No face, no voice, stood at the edge of the ridge watching me. I couldn't cry out. My shadow stretched beyond me into the mist. I can still feel it at my ankles. Entry, November 2, 1947. Tried to kill the shadow. Knife to the calf. Cut into nothing but air. Blood on the blade, dripped onto rock. Vanished. He watched. Entry, November 15, 1947. They say to reclaim what's yours, you must face what you fear. Tomorrow I'll return at noon, look into his hollow eyes, and call out my name. Beyond the notebook lay footprints leading toward a fallen pine. I approached cautiously, camera raised. Beneath the trunk, pressed into the damp earth, I saw something impossible. Two shadows, one my own, and one shapeless, reaching out. In the dimness of the forest, the hollow form seemed to twist, as though watching me through absence. I lifted my voice. Who are you? No answer. Only the low hum of wind through needles, and the sudden snap of a twig behind me. I turned, and there he was, the faceless figure closer than before. The space where eyes should have been seemed to quiver, as if wet. I steadied the camera and took a photo. The shutter clicked. For a moment, the figure dissolved into mist. Then the mist reformed, and the hollow presence stepped forward, reaching out with an invisible hand. I stumbled back, heart racing. The world felt thin, like a page in a book ready to tear. I dropped the notebook, turned, and ran. Branches whipped at my face. The ground tilted beneath me. All I could hear was my breath and the swish of the shapeless shadow behind me, racing over rock and root. When I burst from the trees, the morning sun felt like salvation. I glanced down at my shadow, whole, solid, faithful. For now. But I know it won't last. I won't stop until I force the hollow man to show his face, to speak my name, and reclaim my shadow before it disappears into the fog forever. That afternoon, I went back, one last time, determined to confront the hollow man. I packed only the essentials: the leather notebook, my camera, and a small mirror taped to the back of my phone. If the legend was true, reflection might draw him out. I reached the clearing under the dead pine and set the mirror against a stump. My breath came out in ragged clouds. The mist curled low, and I half expected to see my own face warp in the glass. Instead, the mirror fogged over, like something had exhaled onto it. I held my gaze steady on the emptiness. "Show yourself," I said, voice trembling. The mist shifted. Behind me, a shape took form, the faceless figure emerging from the tree-line. It moved with fluid grace, its hooded head tilting as if curious. In its hand, I thought I saw my own silhouette dancing on the blade of its unseen knife. Heart-pounding, I raised the mirror. The glass cleared, reflecting my face. Pale, determined, defiant. And then, behind me, I saw it. A blurred outline in the glass where there should have been only a tail of shadow. I turned quickly, no one there. But the sound of footsteps came from everywhere at once, closer, encircling me. I closed the mirror like a trap. The world snapped silent. When I opened my eyes again, the clearing was empty, except for a single footprint. My own, next to the mirror on the ground. But there was another. Long, narrow, with splayed toes pointing toward the forest's edge. I picked up the mirror again. In its reflection, I saw the first curl of shadow at my ankle beginning to lift off the ground. It wavered, not attached solidly as before. A breath caught in my throat when I realized the hollow man's invitation was more than a threat. It was an ultimatum. I backed away from the clearing, camera forgotten, notebook clutched to my chest. With every step, the ankle shadow lifted higher, like smoke catching in a draft. By the time I reached the service road, my entire silhouette was fading, leaving my body outlined only by the sunlight. I glanced down one last time. My shadow, a thin wisp stretched behind me, struggling against gravity. Then it was gone. I stood on the service road, heart hammering, staring at my feet where no shadow lay. The fog rolled in, fingers of mist curling around my ankles, seeking purchase, demanding form. I felt exposed, weightless, as if the world no longer recognized my edges. Behind me, the hollow man stepped from the treeline at last. No longer faceless, his features were wrong. Eyes too large and empty, a mouth that curved backward in a grin without teeth. His shadow clung to him in oil-dark ripples, and with every step he took, the mist swirled into shape. He halted 2 paces away and lifted a hand. In it was a shard of mirror, my mirror, fragmented, reflecting only slivers of myself. He held it out. I knew this was the bargain. My silhouette back, in exchange for something precious. I hesitated. In the mirror's flicker, I glimpsed who I was. A body without substance, a person undone. Behind me, the road vanished into white. Ahead, no path home. I took the mirror. The glass pressed cold against my palm. He whispered, voice like whined through dead branches. Stand within your reflection. I turned slowly and held the shard before me. The mist recoiled, refocusing into my outline. My missing shadow reappeared in the glass, whole and waiting. With a final breath, I stepped into the mirror's frame. Light fractured across its surface. Around me, the hollow man watched, his grin widening as the mist closed in. My world went white. When I awoke, I was back at the edge of Pine Ridge, sunlight warming my face, morning stillness pressing in. My shadow stretched solid and true beneath me. I looked down, relief washing over me. But in my hand remained the shard, a broken piece of mirror, spider-webbed with cracks. And as I dropped it, the world dimmed, and I heard his whisper one last time echoing through the trees. Until you forget yourself again. I left Pine Ridge that day, but I carry the shard in my pocket. At night, I slip it out and peer at my shadow in its fractured surface. Stares back whole for now. But I know the hollow man waits for the day I lose my shape again, because once he claims your shadow, he never lets go. Thanks for joining me deep in the Appalachian mist. If tonight's tale sent chills down your spine, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Share in the comments where you're tuning in from and what moment terrified you most. Until next time, keep your lantern lit,